Hello guys, welcome to episode 5 of this series. I hope you've already watched the previous episodes. And if you haven't, please make sure you do that, because as before, whatever we talk about in each episode is kind of based upon the concepts, the ideas that we have already covered in the previous ones. In this episode, I'm going to show you how you can remove books with the filter method, and of course callback props. So in the previous episode, I told you that you can pass function callbacks as props from your parent component to your child component, and then your child component can invoke that, right? So that makes your child components flexible and reusable, which means that you can invoke that child component as many times as you want, each one passing a different callback function from your parent component to your child component. Now, in this episode, we're going to follow the same path, and we want to implement deleting books using the filter method. And then we're going to again use callbacks or callback props to our child components. And of course, those callback props will trigger some changes on the state that we maintain in the parent component, which in our case is the books array. And then we're going to have a delete button for each of our book card. So book card is a component right now inside of our application, whose responsibility is to render the different properties of a book. So our book card doesn't have a button for deleting a book. As you can see here, this is one instance of the book card. So for each book that we have inside of the books array in our app component, we're rendering one book card here, right? So we're going to change the book card component so that for each book card, there is this button called delete that the user can click to delete, a book from the books state. So the first thing I want to talk about is the filter method in JavaScript. So the filter method allows us to create a new array with only the elements from the source array that pass a certain test. So basically, suppose you've got this array, right? And then you add the filter function on this, and then you specify a condition. So this means that you need to check this condition on every single element of this old array, and only the ones that pass this condition will be added to this new array. So for example, suppose you've got a books array, right? And then you are going to run this condition on every single book instead of that books array. So the condition is book ID shouldn't be equal to target ID. And if this condition is true for a certain book from the books array, that element, that book, is going to be added to the remaining books. So this basically means that you are removing the book with the matching ID, with the target ID inside of the ID property. So the filter function allows you to remove specific elements from an array and create a new array. Now we want to use this to add deletion capability to our application. So basically what we are going to do is this. We are going to update the app.jsx, the app component. We're going to add this handler. So again, this is a function that will be passing to the child component. It is taking the ID of a book we want to delete, and then it is using the filter function, as you can see, to remove a specific book, and then it's gonna return, what we are going to get is a new books array, and we're gonna use the set books to set that new array to the state inside of the app component. And then as before, we're gonna pass this function, this callback, to the book card component that we render inside of the app component. So if you take a look here, you can see that the book card component now receives another prop called onDelete, and here we are specifying the callback handle delete book. And then inside of the book card, component, as you can see here, this is the book card component. We need to receive the onDelete. So we're gonna update the book card component. We're gonna add this new prop, right? And then we're gonna have this button. So this button is the delete button. Whenever the delete button is clicked, we're gonna call that, callback function that we have received as a prop, and we're gonna pass the ID of the book that we have received here. So this will allow the parent component to pass a function callback for deleting a book inside of the child component, which in this case is the book card component. So let me go ahead and create this. First, inside of the app.js6, we are going to create a handler for deleting a book. So here we have this handler for adding a book. I'm going to add another handler for deleting the book. We're going to receive the ID of the book we want to delete. We're going to delete that using the filter function, and then we're going to set the local state inside of this component. This is the state I'm talking about. We're going to set this local state to whatever that filter function returns. So the next step, if you remember, was to, inside of the book card component, here, we're going to change we're going to change this piece of code. So we need to have another, prop for the book card component to receive this callback function. So let me get rid of this, and I'm going to write this new version. So as before, let's render a book card component for each book inside of the book's local state. We're going to render ID, title, author is read, then the onDelete, as well as the that was the only prop. Now for the book card component, as you can see here, we are only receiving title, author, and is read. But that is not enough now. We need to receive the delete function callback as a prop, and we're going to render another button here so that the user can click to invoke that function callback. So let me get rid of this and create the new version of this component. So we are going to create the book card component receiving that function callback onDelete, and then we're going to return the template. So as before, we're going to render the title, the author, the status, and then the button, which is going to invoke the delete function callback received as a prop. So now if you take a look, we've got this book card component, right? Because we're going through each book in the app component, we're rendering this, and then we've got this button. So whenever I click this button, that book gets deleted, right? So again, we are passing a function callback from the parent component to the child component. So I have included some explanation here that you can also study. So handle delete book uses filter to create a new array excluding the book with the matching ID. This new array is passed to the set books, and then we have the book card component which receives this onDelete prop and invokes that function in the parent component. So again, these are the concepts that we have talked about here. We've talked about filter, we've talked about callback props, and we've talked about component re-render. So component re-renders means that the component gets re-rendered whenever some update happens to the state of that component. So using that function, we are updating the books state, that books array, right? So that means that the app component will get re-rendered. So now you know how to remove items from React state using filter, you know how to pass event handlers down as props, and you know how to make your application interactive and more maintainable. And that's the end of this episode. If you want to learn more about state, about props and hooks, make sure you watch the upcoming episodes as well.